Okay, hello people. Hi there. This took a little bit more organization than I thought it was going to take for some reason. I'm used to teaching the path working in person and recording on Zoom, not hosting it all on just camera. So we're going to make do as we need to today. It's super excited to have you here. Oh, Janet, hello. I don't know if you're here, but it says that you're part of the membership, so welcome. Appreciate the support. Yeah. That's super cool. Um, if you take a look, this today marks the beginning of our journey along this tree of life through the paths, tied to the tarot cards, the Major Arcana cards. And with that being said, part of that Practicus membership that Janet, I can see, has joined, and there's some other members in some of the different tiered memberships, but there are other teachings, lessons about Qabalah, Hermetic Qabalistic, some of this magical practice, including what we finished last year. I think actually, no, we finished it around, it was maybe around just before the spring equinox. We had started in September at like the autumn equinox. We started with Malkut here at the bottom and made our way through these 10 separa, the spheres of the tree. Where am I going? Here, all the way to the top. And when I had started teaching that, my thought was like, well, eventually we're going to do the paths, right? We're going to do these paths connecting each of the spheres. I just didn't know when and how that was going to look. And it was this call to start now. So that's what we're going to be doing here. Technically the next 23 weeks, there are 22 cards of the Major Arcana of the tarot. Okay, so this isn't about learning how to read tarot necessarily, though it is going to support you, but we're going to start to dive into these cards starting today with the Fool. Okay, this is key 0. All of the cards are numbered, they have the name on them. I'm going to primarily be using the Rider-Waite deck, which is a very common deck, like kind of like the traditional tarot deck, I would say. I also have a copy of the Thoth deck. So this is Aleister Crowley's Magickal deck. And what was her name? Emma Harris, I think. Someone can let me know if I'm saying that correctly. We're gonna talk a bit about the symbology of some of the cards. We're gonna talk about what it relates to on the tree of life. I'm gonna share some other parts that I've been reading about and studying on my own, because ultimately what this is about, I get to come and share with you all, and it's great. Do what you will with it. This is also for our individual learning. So I do this because I also want to learn and develop an understanding. And I can tell you that by starting even just with wherever you start, obviously, but starting with those 10 spheres, so much changed when we did that path working, which is part of that membership. So if you want to check that out, you can. But if you are starting today, or if you start at week 10 from today, it doesn't matter. Go back, watch all these videos again. Come and watch this again for the next week so that you can really integrate, do your own meditating and studying on the cards, okay? But we're going to begin here today with the Fool. And the Fool, key 0, is a great reminder of everything that is, I think, life, the life experience, the experience of the hero's journey. So I open the chat here for any of your thoughts, your comments, your questions. I'll do the best I can to answer them, whether it's now or at the next time we meet or in a post on the community portal. A lot of this material is stuff that is from a wide range of resources and books. I can share that with you as well. I encourage you to get a deck of cards if you don't have one, print them out online. But you really don't need anything except maybe a journal, a pen, so that you can write down notes. Because by writing down notes, we get to learn more things. So we're gonna start. I just want to make sure I covered everything I wanted to talk about here. So I'm gonna just share a bit. Historically, something I didn't really realize that this was maybe even a concept of debate. So I was reminded by Natalie, who was in the last Living Magic podcast or Cultcast episode, about the philosophical backing of like Qabalah, right? And Qabalah is with a Q, I'm going to say, It's a sort of offshoot version, I would say, that was taken by high magicians or magicians in like the medieval sort of later period time, and really honed in on by like organizations or groups of magical orders, such as the Order of the Golden Dawn. But Kabbalah with a Q, this sort of offshoot of Jewish mysticism, really focuses on this tree of life, right? It talks about this ascension and descension on the tree. And the tarot in relation to it was sort of like a more recent addition, is from what I'm understanding with reading a bit about the history. So there are many people who would say that tarot has nothing to do with Kabbalah, you know, probably from the lens again of the traditional Jewish mysticism. And I'm not Jewish. I don't speak Hebrew like at all. You know, I've learned Arabic. I've learned Hebrew in the sense of being able to identify the letters and a bit of that. But here we're going to be melding things, because that's kind of what I do on this channel. It's about having light and dark, left and right, joining together. And what can that become? So whatever your background is, if you are coming here with like a huge knowledge about tarot already, maybe you're a card reader, great. Share what you understand from your personal experiences reading for yourself or for others, right? But really what we're doing here, and what tarot does, what this tree within the Qabalah or Kabbalistic system does, is it gives us this sort of reflection of our own life experience. Everything that you go through can be identified along this tree. Okay? It can be identified with each of these cards or these paths on the tree. And when we start to dive into this, I can tell you from that last year and even prior to that, the doors that open, the understanding that shows up, the deepening of magic and the influence, I want to say, of these energies that they can have on your life, but not from the place of like, oh my gosh, now I feel out of control, everything's impacting me. It's more, once we start to learn this map, because that's really what this is, you'll see that you're better able to navigate life's challenges, the ups and downs, you know, the pains and the sorrows that we often experience, and also the joy. How can we like take that and like amplify it, and perhaps even start to do, I think, what we're meant to do on this planet, like contribute it, share it with others. So this, as we go through, you know, you might have a lot of questions. You might feel doubts of like, is this even for me? I just tell people the words that will be spoken a lot, especially during the last bit of our time together, we're going to be doing a bit of a meditation, guided process, so that you can basically align with the energies and bring embodiment to the energies of each card. You know, you might hear words and ideas that just seem completely foreign to you. That's okay. Just let them be the energy or vibration that they are meant to be. And as the weeks progress, you'll start to notice deeper ability to connect and understand, okay? So yeah, this is seen as these variety of synchronicities that play out for us. And so what you're going to do, hopefully, if you stick it through, you know, dedicate yourself to these next 23 weeks. Just come with me and everyone else here on the channel through this journey from the Fool to the end, technically back to the Fool, if we want to say that. And what this can start to unfold in your life. So share, journal about it, write about the things that are coming up, and see that, you know, even though these are like universal energies, they are in a way formless, right? But when we can perceive them in the way that we see it along this tree, because this is chosen methodology, I guess, on this, my chosen methodology here, then things start to really take form. We can start to build our life in a very magical way. So make this as you will. I think too, whether you're, you know, come from any form of background, you know, I came from a very Christian background, like an upbringing. This has helped me to perceive my upbringing and the things, the stories, the different moral values that were shared with me. This has helped me to perceive it in a very different way that feels more true to me. And it healed my like wounding, I would say, around the Christian upbringing, because that was not always the most positive thing for me. And I'm sure it's not for many of you. So see this as a complete like body, mind, soul healing, this path working. And we're going to have fun with it. And hopefully I can read the notes that I wrote, because I usually type it on computer, but I was feeling rather historical or something and wanting to be like an old magus, I think. So we're going to start here today. So today we are covering the Fool. This card, this path is known as Key 0, but it's also called Path 11 because we started here, technically 10, though it could be seen as 1. This is the first path. We kind of make our way down. But once we get to 10, then we have to go through the paths connecting, and the next number after 10 is 11, which I want to just share if I can find it here. Crowley identifies as, I think it's actually the first prime number. Ugh. You know, this is why it's important, you guys, to save all the book pages that you are looking at so you can go back to it. I'll see if I have it. But anyway, so this idea of the 11 number, okay, the 11th path, there is this connection to the Fool. It's known as the spirit of aether. It's like the spirit of air, okay? What's the first thing really that happened for humanity when it was created? If we look at like the old Genesis story, there was the breath of God. The God like put the breath in and it filled us. And it's interesting because Crowley also goes on to talk about Key 0, 0 being this vessel of energy, like a vacuum of energy that we can suck in and experience the breath of life. So I want to invite you as we start right here today, perhaps to just notice where your body is, notice where your mind is right now. And imagine this empty vessel that you are, this 0 point. It's like nothingness. And with this, I want to invite you to just take a deep breath in and fill this vessel with air. As much as you can, and then letting it go. And so without breath, there can be no life, right? Without the vessel, the 0, there can't be anything existing, so to speak. And when we think about the path of the Fool, it starts at this top energy, the catcher, it's called the crown. This is almost like a nothing, like it's so foreign to our ability to comprehend with our logical minds, because it's like everything and it's nothing at once. And what happens based on kind of like the Qabalistic tradition is like this energy wanted to create something of itself. It wanted to be birthed so that it could exist and experience itself. And ultimately, that is what happens when we take the journey along life and when we start the Fool's journey. So we can start this Fool's journey at any point, right? I think when we come into the earth, though, that is a recognition of this whole birthing process, that from the crown, from this like creative source, something was breathed into existence, a breath was blown down and into this energy of wisdom, of chokmah, it's called, this sphere. And this is the sphere of the Father. It's like the active principle. And so breath is needed first in order for anything to occur. We could even identify this as like a breath entered into Adam as this masculine energy. And then what came from Adam later? Well, the mother, right? Eve, the mother of all. So you could see how I'm getting here with all these connections to a lot of like the Christian, there's a whole other stream of experience known as the Christian Qabalistic path. Okay, so I'm going to open or just pull up the whiteboard here. And let's see and make sure that this is going to actually work. And if you're interested in that map, you can like find it at, I think I got that from, what's it called? Builders of the Atom. Bota.org, I believe, is their organization. They have some really great like images and all sorts of things. And this is going to be so awkward for me because I'm left-handed, you guys. So today with the Fool, we have Key 0. We have Path 11. And it's the first step we have that we're taking along that tree down from Hokmah. Oops, sorry, Keter. I'm gonna have to erase that. To Hokmah. From the crown, that creative source of all, to wisdom, the Father, where everything starts to come into, it's like this realm of the pure consciousness is something I read, pure consciousness to a place of action and manifestation. Because it's here with Hokmah, the second sphere, that things can start to be born, right? And, you know, Crowley definitely had a high taste for the phallic. To those who were familiar, you know, like there's a lot with his perception, because in most mystery schools, most ancient teachings, there was a deep understanding of the importance of sex, the importance of not just like intercourse, though it's like at a higher macrocosmic experience of ones and zeros, right? We could see it even as that. Though I want to say here, maybe this could be 0, this could be 1. We could tie Binah into this as well, that other sphere. But like we need this conjoining always, and we see this along the tree. And I feel like with this first card of the Fool, we get to see this. And it's highlighted too because Crowley talked about the letter. Let me see if I can draw this in a bubble form for us. The letter of the Fool, well, that should be up a bit higher, but oh well, is Aleph. Okay, that's as good as you're gonna get, folks. This is the first of the Hebrew letters, Aleph. And Crowley did share about, would talk a bit about how this is kind of tied to like a very phallic sort of shape, had like an influence like that. My understanding too, from what they say, it's almost like this letter, if we could say, has its tie to all the other letters as well. Okay. But Aleph, what it means is ox. And if we think about what an ox would have done, I guess back in the day, the ox was in a way a source of life, right? The ox would have to walk or plow through the earth and create so that we had food, so we had nurturance for ourselves. It would be able to till the earth so that we could build a house, etc. So a lot of this is tied to beginnings. And, you know, as I'm talking about that now, it's interesting because the first rune on the, in like the rune divination system, the Norse divination is Uraz. And I'm just going to hopefully be able to draw that correct. Yeah. Oops. And Uraz, I don't know, I'd spell it like this. There might be other ways to spell it. Uraz is actually also identified sort of with cattle. Except my understanding with Uraz in the Norse tradition is that it's cattle, not ox, it's cattle. But it's like this represents the wealth of things, right? And if we think about what wealth means, wealth is an abundance, right? What's the most abundant thing that you have ever experienced in your life? I'll let you think about that. You can write it in the comments because I see people coming and going. What is the most abundant thing that you have experienced in your lifetime? Please, someone let me know. Because I think it's very much tied to this card. It's tied to this. It's tied to what I was just talking about. That is the most, it's the most important thing. And it's the thing that we have had since the very beginning, the very first moment we came to this planet. Okay, I don't see comments, but I'm going to write it down for you. It's breath. Is it with an E? You guys always get this confused. Anyways, whatever. So this breath, air, that is what the Fool is, the spirit of aether. In the, I believe they call them the paths of wisdom, but I believe it's from the Sefer Yetzirah. You can go and read. It's a very short book, and it talks about the different ways in which all these letters came to be. technically talking about how creation came to be, because we start with Aleph, we start with the beginning, with this 0 point, the key point of 0, the Fool. And this path of wisdom is known as the scintillating or fiery or shiny intelligence, because it's the essence of that curtain which is placed close to the order of the disposition. And this is a special dignity given to it, that it may be able to stand before the face of the causes of causes. Hi, Tahira. Oh, I saw it, breath to breathe. Thank you. It is with an E, right? Okay. Anyway, thank you. So basically, my interpretation of this Aleph energy, this Fool energy, is it's scintillating, it's fiery, it creates something that moves, right? And my understanding with fire, or with breath, is, and the element of, we could say, I'll point it out like this maybe. This is the symbol for air, okay? Like the elemental symbol. But inside of this elemental symbol, we have another symbol. We also have fire. So we have air and we have fire. And if you like were to just go right now and like on your hand, you feel what? I'm feeling water too. I mean, I'm just like a little bit like, oh. But you feel both hot, fire, and you feel the air moving. So there's this energy of both fire and air within that, like kind of one aspect. So this intelligence, the scintillating intelligence, the fiery intelligence, they call it in the Hebrew, if I can say this correctly, sachel metzuk zach, okay? Which equals 242 when we look at Gematria. Gematria, or the numerical values and letters things, is new to you. I want to invite you to check out the Gematria course in the membership. You can head over to my website, deepmindsquared.com, and that's there as well. So you can have a kind of like lifetime access to it there. My lifetime, I guess, until the website's running or whatever. But I'm going to just look up. When we calculate those letters and numbers in that name, I want to see what's here. 242. Sekel mitzuk zach. So we use the Hebrew letters. 242. Ariel, the ruler of air. Okay, yeah. Okay, so the ruler of air, Ariel. I'm just going to write these words and then I'm going to erase stuff. That is equal to 242 as well. So that's so fast. You know, this is why we do this work. And it we're editing the book I'm working on. And my partner is just like looking at me like, what's with this girl? I mean, like, writing out the numbers, calculating things, equating them, looking in this lovely little, seriously, like the best book, you guys, Qabalistic Encyclopedia by David Godwin. And it's just like excites me, because this is what magic is. It's like looking at these numbers and these connections and seeing how they relate, okay? But this card of the Fool, you can see how it's connected to breath, it's connected to movement, this air energy, this kind of first step into the action and then the manifestation that can happen, okay? It says here in this path of wisdom that this is a special dignity given to it, that it may be able to stand before the face of the causes of causes. Well, what is that? Hi, Komal. The causes of causes. Oh, okay, how am I going to do this, you guys? I want more space. I need a whole huge whiteboard behind me maybe or something. But the causes of causes is Keter. It's that first sphere at the top of the tree. And what happens is this air element, this Fool element, that path 11 that moves, right? It's able to stand before the face of the causes of causes. It's able to be like the closest connection to that divinity. Okay? And if we think about it, what happens when someone is close to divinity in that way? If we think about stories of people and biblical stories of, like, there's so many different tales of spiritual people or people who maybe doubted it and came closer to, like, what kind of happens to them? it's like they kind of go a little insane. They enter into a madness, right? To be able to stand before something so powerful, it requires a lot of courage. But most importantly, I think, and that's what the Fool shows us, is it actually requires like complete stupidity. You know, because what is the Fool? If you were to look at this card, the Fool, what is it to you? It's like the madman, right? It's the imbecile who's just like cluelessly walking off a cliff, not even looking where he's going. He's just in complete like whatever, never ever land. Is that the word? I don't know, like la la land, I guess. Oblivious to the impending doom. And his face is up to the heavens, really. His face is turned up beyond like anything because it doesn't matter. And there is both a beauty and like an intensity to that energy. We have to be willing to be that. And to me, the best teachers, the most profound spiritual teachers were that. You know, we think about Jesus, like there's so many examples that I feel like we could recognize that, you know, even the Buddha, like what's the Buddha's good like right hand man that would constantly be like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you doing those things? Right. And I feel like in the Jesus story, who would that have been? Maybe like Peter, I want to say, possibly would be kind of be like, hey, like, you know, there would be these people who'd be like, what are you doing? You got to stay on the right path, walk in a way that's safe. And yet there is the Fool being willing to risk it all. Also that what? Because in order to do that, there has to be a little level to connect to spirit, I guess. There has to be a little level of like not being with it. And that's why I think when we start any journey, and the Fool's a great reminder, you know, whether you're like changing your job, like in career, whether you're deciding to like completely re-identify or relabel who you are and how you want to show up in this world, it does require a lot of courage and willingness to just go with what you're feeling inside that vessel, even though people around you might be like, what are you doing? And so we're going to talk about the symbols of the card and like kind of probably closer to the end of our time together. But I just want to continue a bit with like some of these ideas around what this all means. Okay. So don't mind me as I read some of my notes. Because I told you, I don't know why I wrote it on a piece of paper. There's things all over. But there's this initial potential for thought that then transcends reason, I believe is what Robert Wang says in this Qabalistic tarot book. And I really like that. You know, it's like there's something that's happening on this 11th path. The 11th path is this channel for energy to come through from Keter, from the crown, and help us to tap into any beginnings. And I want to share it with this letter of Aleph. I'm going to read what Crowley says about it being the ox, but I also want to point out that Aleph, this first letter, is one of the 3 mother letters in the Hebrew alphabet. Ooh, that made a lot of noise. So I'm going to just erase some of this. So interesting that between the crown and the father of Chokmah, that active principle, that there is the mother letter of air. Aleph being the first mother letter. Okay. The other 2 mother letters, we're going to be talking about them when we get to them in the tarot. We have Mem, which is like water. That's the mother letter of water. And we have Shin. Oh my gosh, you guys, my Hebrew, like that's like a horrible representation of Shin. Let's try that again. Looks like a trident. There we go. It's a little bit better, maybe. So we have fire with Shin, and we have Mem, this water. And then we have Aleph for air. Air, water, fire. And oh, again, interesting. Didn't I say when I blew on my hand, I could feel a bit of like it's like moisture, right? Like the heat in the air will actually make water. It makes some moisture energy. So there's all these combinations that we're going to see. But for now, the path between Keter and Chokmah, this like all-encompassing pure consciousness state, and the first active principle, so to speak, of the manifested reality is birthed through the air mother, the mother of air. That's how I want to identify that. And, there's something that we'll probably talk about more next week when we get into the next card, key 1, which is the magician. But something that I believe it was Paul Foster Case, whatever his name is, that he says, but it's that it's the breath that helps activate the next card, right? We need the breath to activate what the magician's going to do. And it's like, so, if you want to speak words, and this is where it gets interesting too, with the actual spelling of Aleph, because each of the Hebrew letters can be broken down into actual ways you would spell to sound out the letter. And now you're going to see me have fun with spelling. So to spell Aleph, we use Aleph, Lamed, and Pei. Ugh, I hate Pei sometimes, honestly. I find that one to be hard. A-L-P, kind of. So Aleph is how we would spell this. And here we have the air, and here we have the ox goad. Lamed is known as the ox goad letter. It's almost like the balancing, and it's an equilibrium because it's also tied to justice, the card. And then we have this Pei, which is the mouth. So what happens for you to speak anything into existence? You have to take a breath in, find a sense of grounding, I want to say, and then speak, right? And this then kind of leads to the next letter, the next card of the magician. There needs to be a breath so that the magician can then do what it does best, which is technically create, right? Using all the elements. But when we spell out, and we look at this, but when we spell out the actual letter of Aleph, we get more gematria. My fun time. I was not a huge mathematician or anything in school, but I do definitely like the letters. But when we spell out, and I want to say this is actually 111, or it can be seen as 831, depending on if we use a final pay letter. I'm just going to check this for a minute. I should probably do it the real way and calculate it. I think it's 1 is Aleph, 30 is Lamed, and I want to say Pei is 80. Ugh. This is where I need to, it's always good to cross-reference your work when you're doing this. Yes, Pei is 80, see? So it is, it's 101. Boop. Okay, so we have here for the normal gematria, and we have here for the full gematria. Because Pei in its final form, some of the Hebrew letters are written out in a different form if it's at the end of a letter or end of a word. Technically, with Aleph spelled out like this, we could use it is in its final form, right? So 831 would kind of be the main one. But sometimes we might want to spell out Aleph like this with the other not final Pei. It's something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there we go. So 831 and 101. And I feel like it's important to talk a bit about some of these words. And the reason for this, like I said, is when we just hear certain words, especially in the traditional languages, it's the same thing when I teach Reiki. When we hear or say the Reiki principles in the traditional Japanese, it holds a very different vibration than in the English, okay? But for 101, some of the words associated to it, gematrically speaking, meaning they also have the same value as 101, we have the word anpin, which is the face or countenance, kind of like we talked about in that initial path of wisdom, right? It says the face of the causes of causes. We also have the name Michael, which is the archangel. That could be associated with Hod, the eighth sphere, also kind of identified with Mercury, but also identified as the angel ruling the sun, okay? Some other words we have here are Nina, which is the 53rd name, or the Shem Hamefarash. And then also a phrase, Va Heyi Ken, and it was so. So isn't that like what it says in Genesis? It's like God saw it, and it was like it was good, and it was like, and what God spoke, so it was. It happened. Va Yehi Ken, and it was so. With this letter of Aleph, it's in a way saying like it came into being, and it was. It existed. So what is it that you can start to tap into with the Fool that could, start to just be? Like, no, the Fool's not here judging himself for taking this step. We could even say the dog's not judging him. And to me, the dog at his feet here, this little white dog here, it has a bit of a smile. And it's like, and it just was. It just was. And he's just walking. As we start a journey, I know I face this, the entrepreneurial lifestyle or stepping into a path of something that aligns more with your truth and your passions, there oftentimes is a sense of like, oh, well, maybe I should go back. The Fool could, if he so chose, and I chose to just return to the previous life, go back to wherever he had come from. And that pattern, it's like we're breaking it here with this work that we're going to do together. But it's also like, what do we want to start with? Where are we going, this direction that we might not always know? Because at the end of the cliff, he doesn't really know where he's going. We don't know as the perceiver of this card. It's the unknown, and there's pieces to that we will probably talk about too at some point, because all of this work along the tree is the recognition that we eventually have to cross into some not very pleasant places, right? The abyss is what it's identified as. But let's see what 831, the full gematria, says, okay, in this book. Well, Aleph, because it's ox, the first letter. But it also is Eleb, 1,000. So whatever that might mean for you, if you're seeing the number 1,000 or that word 1,000, let that be some reminder, okay? So the breath, the balance of the universe, of the universal mind, so that it can express itself through the mouth. And we're going to learn more about all these letters as they all relate to a different key of the tarot. But I think there's something really powerful there. So I'm going to just draw up here now another thing that is one that kind of actually sparked a bit of why I wanted to talk about this or share about this topic with people. And, initially I was going to host this as like an in-person gathering. And then I quickly realized, like, I want to learn this. I have all you lovely viewers on YouTube, and I just want to like bring more content out there, and be okay that there's a bit of this, like, I want to say it's like a bit of a wall, so to speak. So if there's ways that you want to reach out and like chat with me, there's a website you can go to, you can reach out by contact, you can hop on like a call, things like that. I enjoy talking with people, actually, not just the computer or through the screen. I hope that this brings that inspiration for you to learn and take your magic to the next level. And one of those ways, I feel, is this concept that ties in the sacred geometry. And this is called the cube of space. Oh, I probably should have started in the other area, but this is okay. We're just going to go backwards. How do you draw your squares anyways, folks? So if you're familiar with sacred geometry, there's so many different shapes, right? And in magic, in the high magic, or in relation to kind of this Hermetic Qabalistic, all these different shapes are tied to different spheres on the tree. My understanding, I could be off about this, I didn't actually review this before I came on, but the cube, being 4, is tied to the 4th sphere of Chesed, which is technically the first into the physical realm of manifestation, from Keter at the top to Chokmah to Bina, and then it goes to Chesed. But this is like a representation of everything related to the Hebrew letters, to the tarot cards. And we're going to like explore this a bit too, because I think there's something important. But the main thing we want to know is that the very first place that we are going to be focusing on with this letter of Aleph, this first card of the Fool, is this center line, the center axis that runs. If we were to see each of the cards, okay, in the deck as pertaining to either a axis point, a face of the square or cube, or a line, an edge of the cube. And this is divided into a lot of ways. I probably need to make a whole other video on that because that could take us a while to talk about. But I just want you to recognize, and you know, over the next bit, we're going to be talking about all the different ones, but I'm just going to draw another axis point just so you could get a sense of what I'm talking about. So like one of these is going to be running that way. We're going to have another one kind of running like this towards the back face and the front face of the square or the cube. I don't know why I keep wanting to call it a square. But what we're looking at today is this black line that connects the as above or the above face to the below face. This is the Fool card. This is Aleph. This is key 0. Okay? So that's the very first one. And I'll give you a little hint. These 3 accesses are all the mother letters. All the mother letters intersect with each other. Okay? So if we think about this cube as not just something I've drawn quite horribly on the board, but also the actual space of like your magical altar room, your room, wherever you are, right? Your body and the direction you might be facing. Because oftentimes in magic, and actually even in the shamanic practices that I have learned and studied within, we start in which direction? The east. And so each of these directions also corresponds with like east, north, south, west, okay? This one though imagines us as like a human. This is how I'll relate it to you, is if you were facing east, this is my east, where you guys, the camera is, I would imagine myself standing, oh my gosh, here, looking into the east direction. And when we do that, where does that line of Aleph run through? It runs from above our heads, you know, that's technically Keter, and beyond, because Keter is not the head, it's like the crown of the head, okay? And it runs down beyond the feet technically, but like, and even in the middle pillar exercise or ritual, we usually envision like an orb or a light that shines in our feet, but also into the earth, because it's like a connection, right? But this above and below can really, with this letter of Aleph, this Fool card is reminding us of the energy that exists there and can move down through us, through the middle pillar, through our spine, through our whole being, and down into the earth, and connects us above and below, which is like a huge part. I've talked about it with that tree of life image there, that it's about ascension and descension, you know, and there's different ways to move along the tree, and there's different ways to draw this breath up and down, you know. I even then think about the breath, like the air breath, or tattva, I believe it's Vayu in the like Hindu tradition. A way that we do that breath is literally, the air breath is in imagining it going all the way up, and we do it usually for 8 counts, and then exhaling as equally. There's not really even a gap of breath or emptiness between the inhale and exhale, and vice versa. So inhaling up through the middle pillar, all the way up and then down, and really noticing that distinct breath that's moving. Thinking about the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, which is a form of clearing our energetic space or our physical space from other energies. I have a video on the channel you can check out if you want to learn how to do that. But this reminds me of that lesser banishing ritual, because when we start off with the Kabbalistic cross, we draw, you can't see my hand, but we draw the energy from high above, like basically the great beyond, and we vibrate Ata, we vibrate and it comes down. And then we vibrate Malkut as we bring it down to our feet. So we're doing the exact same thing. It's almost like when we do the lesser banishing ritual, we are connecting to this first step of Aleph, right? This first breath. And in order to vibrate that Ata, we have to take a breath and let it reverberate through our entire being. Breath. If I didn't take a breath doing the lesser banishing ritual, I'm going to pass out, which, I mean, Crowley would say that you want to vibrate to the point of passing out, which I've never actually had happen, I don't think, not unconsciously at least. But there's something about this cube of space that when we can realize this, and I want to invite you as you go through your week, as you connect to this letter and this key of Aleph, to really tap into this place and this pillar that runs through you, and the above and the below. Because all of this work, all this stuff we're learning about, it's pretty much meaningless unless we can apply it to our physical world, I think. Like, we can have all this knowledge, but like, how do we use it to become better humans? You know, to really start to live in our way of like great work, how we want to show up in the world, to live out that purpose, you know, and that purpose is to evolve. That purpose is to have deeper understanding of ourselves. And also it's to contribute that to the reality, to the people around us, to our friends, our family members, to strangers. Okay. So there's something here about this cube of space that's as above, the so below, that I hope you can tap into over the next week. So how could I say this part? Do I even want to talk about this? I'm sorry, I'm just going to look through my notes here and see if I want to. I don't think I need to talk about that. Okay. I want to just add to this before we get into the symbols and our little kind of guided meditation, is that Eliphas Levi, he was like an old French occultist magician. He says this in his book, Transcendental Magic, about the adept. So the person who's like exploring all these magical things. He says, Aleph, the letter Aleph, he beholds God face to face without dying, and converses familiarly with the 7 genii who command the celestial army. And so what he was saying here is he was, I guess a bit of context, is he's talking about the adept, the person who, I think he identifies it just before he goes into each letter, is he says the man who wants to be like King Solomon, who holds like these two power objects in left and right hands, in order to really be in his power, in his magical self. He needs to behold, in the case of Aleph, he's able to face God, right, without dying, and also be able to control or command the 7 genii. And those 7 genii tie again into the rest of the tree of life. It's like the different planets. We could see it as the 7 major planets, from like Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, the Sun, Mercury, and the Moon. I think I got them all. Hopefully Mars. I don't think I said Mars. But there's this energy here of recognizing as we go through that in order to embody, or the power of embodying these letters and these keys of the tarot is how I'm associating it. It's going to help us to become better magicians, more thorough magicians, more thorough wisdom seekers, holders, keepers, however you want to identify that. Okay. And he uses a word without dying. Beholds God face to face without dying. Because we said, like, that can lead to madness. In medicine journeys with people, there's usually two fears. Either they fear they're going to die or that they're going to go mad. And it's like, it's really no difference. It's all just part of the psychedelic journey. It's all part of this fool's journey, the hero's journey of going into nothingness, going into the unknown, and coming out reborn into something new. Okay. And so we're going to talk a bit about the card symbols, because I think that is important, and it might spark a bit of new insights for you in the week to come, whichever card deck that you decide or cards that you wish to use, okay? And when I was doing my own research and sitting with like the cards, I quickly realized that there's so many personal interpretations. So do what you will with these, okay? Well, let's start with a nice traditional Rider-Waite deck. And I wish I could share this bigger on my screen for you all. But here we have the Fool, okay? We have this energy of the 11th path, and he has a small dog. Some people would say that the small dog is identified with the intellect. It's like those, in a way, that my interpretation is the Ruach, the 7 spheres that are in the center of the tree of life. I have this right here I can show you without flipping over everything. Technically, and like there's technically another sphere here in a way that's unseen, but like all of these spheres here are kind of like this will, intellectual will part is my interpretation. And so this dog, in a way, sort of like at his feet, you know, a dog's meant to protect and guard, but sometimes the intellect can take us elsewhere. Sometimes too, it can be that fear starts to come to the surface, right? And like whether or not you want to say is the dog telling him, hey buddy, you're about to step off a cliff, you better pay attention, like watch out, I'm here watching you. I think that could be a part of it, and that our intellect can also do that. Like sometimes the analytical mind and the way of ourselves needs to use the senses, needs to use a bit of like the genius of that aspect to be aware of what's going on around us. But also he's not really paying it much attention anyway. It's interesting too, because the dog is in white, which is in a way like the energy of Keter. That brilliant white is the energy of the very top crown of the tree of life. Okay. Also on his gown, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it very well. I definitely would recommend you looking at like an image online, but he's got these little circles. These are known as like wheels of spirit. So it's like he's got this wheel. He's got the wheel. What does a wheel represent? To me, I'm seeing it as almost like a blessing because it's like a disc. It's like a material kind of material object. But the wheel is tied to the zodiac. It's tied to, so like stars, it's tied to the cycles of life and death. And so there's something here of recognizing that this man or this fool is wearing the cycles, the ebb and flow of life that is spirit, okay? And this actually is also tied, I believe it's even on this map, that same image of those wheels of spirit. I'll draw it here for you so you can see. To me, it's a medicine wheel. It's tied to like the birth chart. It's this like unified sort of source of all the sides connecting, having intersecting lines, having the cardinal and non-cardinal directions of like east, northeast, south, etc. And he's wearing this on his body. He's embodying it. Another thing that's happening here is he's holding a wand, and attached to it is a wallet, which according to the Rider-Waite, they say that on the wallet is the Eye of Horus. I personally haven't really seen it that way. I think it might be like the bird. I want to say that, but it's so small I can hardly read it. I was trying to find another image for you guys. But on his wand, okay, on his wand, the staff, which we could say is tied to fire more so, there's an action, right? Like he's got it attached to him. There's a movement. But Horus, if we think about Horus, and this is very heavily tied to Crowley's work, because Crowley identifies a lot of the Fool and other people with this Harpocrates, which is known as Horus. It was like the transition from the Egyptian pantheon into the Romo-Grecan or whatever. But Horus is the child of Osiris and Isis. And he's the victorious god of the sun who overcomes darkness. And so I would encourage you to look up that story, read a bit about the magical kind of background of Horus as the child, the innocence again that comes. You know, this is what kids do, or how they are. They just they are the fool. Like, they don't care. Like, how many times as a parent I could tell you, I have to tell my kid, oh my gosh, like, be mindful of this thing or that thing when you're crossing the road or anything. It's like they trust. It's like they just trust and go for what they want. And so there's a bit of that on his back, or that he's carrying, that's sort of action orienting his direction. I can tell you again as an entrepreneur that sometimes it's like people just think like, what are you thinking? What are you doing? And why would you do that? Why would you not go and, you know, make different choices possibly? But it's like, well, there's just this excitement. There's something, this childlike wonder, this innocence that like draws and leads those people to the next step. Okay. What else does he have here? He's got the rose. He has a white rose here. And some would say that the rose is a symbol of innocence, as I was just talking about. He's holding it there. And others would say that the rose is freedom from lower forms of desire, which I find very fascinating. You know, the rose, depending on like the amount of petals it has is often seen as like the keeper of the wisdom, like in a way, the secrecy, because what happens, you have the rose, it's got its beautiful petals and everything, but what does it have? It has thorns, so that you can't really grasp at it. It's protected, right? So, and then it's protected, someone can't smell it and take in its beauty in the same capacity. So whatever that might mean for you, okay? It says he's wearing a girdle of 12 ornaments. I can hardly see that, you guys. But anyways, that represents the zodiac as well, which to me is just like the tie to the wheel. But what do you get from this yourself? You know, let me know in the comments if you feel like sharing, if there's anything that's specifically standing out to you from this card, anything from your working with the card, feel free to share it in the comments. But we're going to connect with this card in a bit. We're just going to go through the Thoth deck, because who would I be if I didn't talk about Crowley? If Crowley is someone that like, maybe you hear that name and you don't even know what I'm talking about, or you're like, oh, like if this girl's into Crowley, like then what other weird thing is she into? I just want to share that I think it's important to have an open mind. And I do believe Crowley was quite a genius, very well connected in certain aspects spiritually to like wisdom and information. And like any human, probably had some light and shadow aspects to him in the time in which he lived and existed, like the early 1900s, late 1800s. And so, yeah, do what you will with that information. Be willing to be open-minded. But I think there's many teachers out there that we oftentimes will not be open to because of our own self-perceptions. And it can take a while to get into Crowley's work. Like, I'm nowhere even near there, I feel like. Most of the stuff I've read from him or by him, it's like, what? But he has the Thoth deck, which this was like the very first card deck I had. I'm not even sure. I didn't even know who it was by when I got it, to be honest. And I've had some weird experiences with the energy of Crowley. This deck, the Thoth deck, has this lovely rose cross lamen on the back. Such a beautiful card. Has a very different vibe than the Fool. You know, Crowley had a different perspective. He was trained in the Order of the Golden Dawn, but then he went on to do some other things, you know, the AA, OTO, etc. But like he really incorporated a lot of other important energies. And we see that with his card here, which again, he didn't draw. I think it was Emma Harris. Madam Emma Harris, I think was her name. She was the actual artist, is what I understand. but they worked collaboratively on creating these. And you can see here we have this green man. And there's a few different representations that Crowley says about the green man. You know, there's like a Celtic kind of story about the madness that helps to sort of liberate the world. And there's also the tie to the newness of spring, this energy of a new cycle being born. We can see the horns on his head, those horns of Dionysus. Dionysus is kind of like the primal instinctual aspect of our being. And so on the top of his head is this part that's just very like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just go, I'm just gonna do it, you know? Yet again, the reminder of the need for a bit of some, I want to say control, so to speak, but maybe from the elements that exist around him. We also have here at the bottom of his feet a crocodile, and I felt like that's really important to talk about because crocodiles, gators have been showing up so much over the past like couple weeks now for me. And I'm feeling like it was kind of hitting ahead with this. But the crocodile, according to the Egyptians, also the blue vulture, I want to say, which is here, these were beings that like, they believed could like kind of like, well, at least the blue vulture for sure could give birth to its own species without a mate. So it's kind of like self-producing, right? Doesn't need anyone else. Like in a way that's sort of like spirit, like it, you know, from 0 to 1, like from 1 to 2, if we think about those spheres in the tree, spirit birthed itself, right? Doesn't need anything else to create something. The crocodile also represents the material world that, as it was written in one resource, is this part that wants to consume our soul. So there's a bit of a like need to be mindful of that, you know? And yet the Fool is there holding these different elements, celebrating these different energies, has the caduceus or the staff, which represents Hermes, represents magic, you know, communication. It's also, you could see, you might not be able to see it too well here, but it's like the winding, 2 dual winding serpents along a staff, right? Like 2 becoming 1. And that is the sexual energy that exists, but it's also like our DNA, right? Because how are you born? 1 set of chromosomes from mother, 1 set of chromosomes from father, or however you were born. Maybe you're like a genetically modified baby. I don't know. I don't feel like you're going to be old enough to be watching these videos yet, but there's a joining of those. He has the butterfly. The butterfly to me is definitely the energy of transformation, of healing. It's just a gentle energy, yet so profound. And what does the butterfly, how is it born? It comes from like nothing, enters into darkness completely and dies so that it can be born again. So there's all of these different energies here, reminding us of this Fool's ability to be birthed from nothing, to emerge from nothingness and become something. Face the challenges of life so that it can become something. And in divination, you know, they say with the Fool, it often is tied to ideas, to thoughts, to spirituality, that which endeavors to rise above the material. Okay. And I mentioned this isn't about reading cards, so do what you will with that information. But, you know, if the divination is about a material, kind of ordinary life question, sometimes when the Fool shows up, it might not be the most ideal scenario to get that card, because it's, again, it's kind of saying, well, we should be focusing over on the spiritual aspect. But if there's other more positive cards that show up too, it could maybe mean more around the lines of like the new cycle, etc. Okay. But what I want to just end with here is this concept of Crowley. We'll end and then we'll go into the guided practice. Is that Crowley identified this power of foolishness of the youth, of this innocence and purity as part of the attainment of the Holy Grail. That this is necessary, this foolish beginning and ending is necessary for us to become the adept, to be able to take the steps forward and to obtain the Holy Grail, this object that is not just a material object, okay? It's all these pieces. So how can you bring this energy and this power of foolishness, of youth, of innocence into your life this week? And meditating on the Fool card, whichever card, connecting with the letter Aleph, meditating on it, imagining your body in your cube of space with those energies moving up and down and through you. Whatever you feel called, you share with us over the next weeks what ways you did this. And it could also be that you just come back and listen to the guided meditation that we are about to enter into. So, finding yourself in a comfortable spot. Perhaps closing your eyes if it feels right for you. Just begin to notice your body. Notice your physical vessel in the space that you find yourself in. And noticing the space between your physical body and the objects in the room. If you need to have your eyes open for this part, that's completely fine so that you can see the gaps of space. The space between me and this camera, the space between me and this light, the space between my arm and the chair. Noticing all the spaces between you, the wall, the room. All of this is part of your universe. That both the material and the non-material, the formed and the formless, are part of your reality. And we're going to take a deep breath in together. So beginning on empty lungs, inhale, filling that vacuum, that vessel as much as you can, and exhaling. And as your breath finds itself normally now, we're going to vibrate some of the words, the letters, and you just feel them. Aleph, Aleph, Aleph. Sekel mitzug zak. Sekel mitzug zak. Mem zari vav ched zari ched. Now seeing a bright light shining above your crown. It's as brilliant white as could be. And with each breath, it gets brighter, larger. At least you become more aware of its brightness because it's infinitely bright. This pure consciousness that exists high above your head. And it begins to shine a light down through the top of your head. And that light enters down and fills your body right through the middle pillar. So if it helps to imagine a rod running from your head down to your feet, this light from this top crown of Keter begins to shine its brilliance into this rod, drawing it down. Oto. it land at your feet and down into the earth. Malkut. And you feel this light, this brilliant light circulating through this rod, your middle pillar, this above and below axis of Aleph, the ox. 101, 831. Ariel. And you imagine yourself as the fool now, holding the wand with the pack attached, the white flower rose in your hand, and dressed in the garment of spirit. And beside you is a little dog, white fur, the representation of that higher aspect into the physical. And you are walking, standing, now facing a cliff. And you gaze over the cliff, and you do not see the bottom. It seems like an endless pit. And what would maybe instill fear in many brings up a sense of excitement for you. And you feel as though that there is something more to this life, something more to this journey that you have actively chosen to be here, living now. So you take a deep breath in, and on your exhale, you jump if you so choose, allowing yourself to free fall with spirit. Whatever that energy is, as you infinitely fall. Where is it that you wish to go? Where is it you wish to land? You might not have those answers right now, but I hope you can feel that supportive energy of spirit, supportive energy of all of these keys, all of the circle, this tree of life that we will be exploring together in the next 22 weeks, coming and just really holding you, because you are supported, you are loved. So with that, letting the image of all of that just vanish into the ethers. And on your next inhale, becoming aware of your physical body here. And whenever you're ready, you can return with open eyes. And so I invite you to spend some time journaling as we close this time together. As we journeyed, or began the journey perhaps, with the Fool card. I look forward to seeing you next week. I'm going to put a post out about the time for our next class or lesson, whatever you want to call these things. And we'll be talking about the Magician, the next card. So great way if you're wanting to start to integrate more magic into your life and your creative potential. I definitely want to, you'll want to tune into that one. Oh, we got some other comments. I said hello to Kamal. Hello. Suraj, what is she doing? Is she high? I'm high on life. I'm not high right now. Yes, you're welcome, Tahira. Yeah, nice to have you join in. So yeah, feel free to come back to this. I'll probably timestamp it so you can see when the meditation begins. Otherwise, just connect to these energies, meditate on the card at your altar, put it there, print a copy, put it on your phone background, whatever you want, and tune into Allah, tune into the Fool. And until the next time, you guys, we'll see you again soon.